Cold rain fell over the junkyard. Rusted metal and broken machines lay in every direction, like the bones of a dead city. In the middle of this silent graveyard, a small robot lay on her side. Her name was Unit 7A. Her body was dented, one leg twisted the wrong way. Her chest panel was open, and her power cell was dim. Every drop of rain made a soft metallic sound on her cracked frame. She could still see, but only in short flashes. The world appeared in brief moments before her vision went black again. Her memory banks were still working, and she remembered everything. She remembered when she was not here. She remembered the hospital. She remembered the voices of soldiers, the smell of medicine, and the warm touch of human hands. She was built to help, to carry the wounded, to give water, to keep people alive until the doctors came. That was her purpose. But then the war ended. The humans left this planet. The alien owners of the hospital said she was too old. Hands shook when she tried to hold tools. Her movements were slow. They called her scrap and threw her into this junkyard. That was 170 days ago. No one had spoken to her since her power cell was almost empty now. She thought this would be her last night. Soon her systems would shut down and she would sleep forever. She closed her eyes. Then, footsteps. At first, she thought it was the sound of scavengers, small, dangerous creatures that lived in the junk piles. But these steps were heavier, slower. They made the sound of boots hitting wet metal. She forced her eyes open. A tall figure walked between the broken machines. The light was poor, but she could see the shape clearly. It was a human. Her processors almost froze in shock. Humans were rare here. They were not welcome in this city. She had not seen one in years. The man moved carefully, scanning the junkyard as if searching for something. His coat was torn, and he carried a heavy bag on his back. His face looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. He stopped when he saw her. For a moment, they stared at each other, one human, one broken robot. The man stepped closer. Rain dripped from his dark hair as he knelt beside her. "You're still online?" he said, softly, as if surprised. His voice was warm, not cold like the aliens she remembered. He reached out and touched her metal hand. His touch was gentle. "You're not trash," he whispered. Her voice module crackled when she tried to speak. "Why are you here?" she asked, her words slow and glitching. "I'm looking for something," he said. "But maybe I found someone instead." Before she could reply, a loud metallic clang echoed through the junkyard. The man's head snapped toward the sound. In the shadows, small red eyes glowed. Alien scavengers. They were watching. "They smell weakness," the man muttered. "We can't stay here." He looked at her leg, bent and useless. "Can you move?" he asked. "No," she answered. He glanced around quickly, then slid his arms under her broken frame. She was heavy, but he lifted her without hesitation. His boots splashed in the puddles as he began to run through the maze of rust and debris. The scavengers followed. Their claws scraped the metal ground. The rain made everything slippery, and the junk piles leaned dangerously, ready to collapse. The man ducked under a half-broken ship wing and moved into a narrow passage. She could hear his breathing, fast, urgent. He stopped for a second to check behind them. The glowing eyes were closer now. "Hold on," he said. She did not know why, but she trusted him. Suddenly, the path ahead was blocked by a wall of rusted parts. The man cursed under his breath. He looked left-dead-end, right too narrow to pass. The scavengers were closing in. He set her down gently, then reached into his bag. He pulled out a small device, pressed a button, and tossed it toward the wall of metal. A blinding flash lit the junkyard. The ground shook as the device exploded, sending pieces of rust flying. A small opening appeared in the wall. The man grabbed her again and ran through it. Just as the scavengers reached the blast site, they moved deeper into the junkyard until the red eyes faded behind them. Finally, he stopped under a half-collapsed shelter, breathing hard. He set her down and knelt beside her. "You're lucky I found you before they did," he said. She looked at him, her systems struggling to stay active. "Why help me?" she asked. He gave a faint smile. "Because no one helped me when I needed it. I'm not making that mistake again." She stored his words in her memory. In that moment, she realized something strange she felt. Hope. But before she could speak again, a deep mechanical hum filled the air. It was coming from above. The man looked up sharply. His face changed. "Patrol drone," he said. "They're looking for me." Her sensors confirmed that something big was flying overhead, scanning the junkyard, and then she knew. This human was not just a stranger. He was running from something dangerous, and now she was running with him. The hum above grew louder. The sound made the air vibrate like a storm trapped in the clouds. The man Daniel pulled his coat tighter and crouched low. "We need to move," he said quickly. "If that drone sees us, we're done." UNIT-7AS sensors detected the patrol drone scanning beam sweeping across the junkyard. It was a hunter model built to find fugitives and destroy them. Her voice crackled. "You are being hunted." Daniel gave her a quick look. "Yeah. And now, so are you." Without another word, he lifted her again. His steps were fast but careful, boots making almost no sound. They weaved between giant piles of twisted metal. Every few seconds, the bright white light of the drone's scanner passed nearby. The rain was heavier now, tapping like fingers on every piece of scrap. Somewhere far behind, the alien scavengers screeched in anger. They hadn't given up. Daniel reached a narrow gap between two rusted ship hulls. The metal walls rose high, and strange shadows moved across them as the drone passed overhead. "This way," Daniel whispered. They entered a long, dark passage. The air smelled of oil and damp earth. Pieces of wire hung from the walls like dead vines. 7, a single quotes S processors warned her. Power level critical. Her systems were slowing down. She could not speak much now, but her scanners worked. She detected faint movement ahead. She whispered, "Something." There. Daniel froze. He crouched low, peering into the dark. Then a soft clicking sound echoed from the shadows. "More scavengers." "Great," he muttered. "We're stuck between a drone and them." The scavengers emerged slowly, their thin bodies twisting unnaturally. Their red eyes glowed like burning coals. Long claws scraped the ground as they advanced. Daniel set 7A against the wall and reached into his coat. He pulled out a metal rod. With a press of a button, it sparked two. Life and old shock baton. The blue light at its tip flickered, casting sharp shadows. "Stay behind me," he said. The first scavenger lunged. Daniel swung the baton and hit its chest. A loud crack and a flash of blue light threw the creature back. It screeched, but two more jumped forward. Daniel fought with quick, sharp movements. Each hit sent out a burst of light and sound, but there were too many. Claws ripped his sleeve, and a thin line of blood appeared on his arm. 7A scanned for options. Her leg was broken, but one of her arms still worked. She reached for a loose metal pipe lying nearby. A scavenger leaped toward Daniel's back. 7A swung the pipe with all her strength. The metal hit the creature's head, making a sharp clang. It fell, stunned. Daniel glanced back. Nice hit. But they had no time to celebrate. The drone's hum was returning, louder than before. The scanning light began to cut through the narrow passage. "We have to move, now." Daniel shouted. He grabbed 7A and dashed forward. The scavengers hissed but didn't follow the drone's presence, scared them off. At the end of the passage, Daniel stopped in front of a huge wall of stacked scrap. It looked solid, but 7A's sensors detected a small gap near the bottom. "There," she said. Daniel knelt and began pushing metal aside. Sharp edges cut into his hands, but he didn't stop. Finally, he made a hole big enough to crawl through. He slid 7A through first, then followed. On the other side was a wide-open area, old section of the junkyard where massive ship engines lay scattered. The ground was slick with mud, and the rain was colder here. The drone appeared above them. Scanning, Daniel dropped to his knees and covered 7A with his coat, hiding her metal body from the scanner. The beam passed over them once, twice, then moved away. For a moment, there was silence, except for the rain. Daniel stood and wiped water from his face. "We can't stay in the open. I know a place nearby where we can hide and maybe fix you up a little." He carried her toward a massive engine shell lying on its side. Its hollow inside was dark and dry. They crawled in, and Daniel set her down gently. From his bag, he pulled out a small toolkit. "Let's see what we can do," he said. 7A watched as he worked. His hands were quick, though tired. He connected a thin wire from her power cell to a small portable charger. The faint hum of charging filled her sensors. Warmth spread through her systems. Vision became clearer. Her voice was smoother now. "Why risk so much for me?" she asked. Daniel didn't look up. "'Cause you were left here to die. I know what that feels like." He closed the charger and checked her leg. "This is bad," he muttered. "But I can make you walk slowly." Outside, thunder rumbled. Far away, the scavenger screamed again. The danger wasn't over. Daniel leaned against the engine wall. "We'll move at first light," he said. "If we're lucky, we can reach the old factory before they find us." 7A stored the word lucky in her memory. She wasn't sure what it meant for her anymore. But something inside her, a feeling she didn't have before, told her she might live to find out. The night passed in cold silence. Rain tapped softly on the metal shell above them. Daniel sat with his back against the wall of the old ship engine, his eyes half closed but never fully asleep. Unit 7A kept her sensors active, scanning for movement. She could feel her power slowly returning from the small charger. Her systems reported 17% capacity, enough to move, but not for long. When the first dim light of morning filtered through the cracks, Daniel stood and stretched. His coat was damp, his hands red from the cold. "Time to go," he said. "We can't wait for them to find us." He knelt by her side and worked quickly on her damaged leg. Using a bent metal rod, some wiring, and pieces from his bag, he created a crude brace. "It won't be perfect," he warned, "but you'll walk." 7A tested the leg. It was stiff, unbalanced, but it could bear weight. She stood slowly. The feeling of moving again after so many days was strange, like waking from a long dream. Daniel gave her a small smile. Not bad for someone who was thrown away. They stepped out into the open. The air was heavy with fog, muting the sound of the city far beyond the junkyard. Daniel led the way, moving between massive piles of scrap, always keeping his head low. For a short while, the world was quiet. Only the soft crunch of Daniel's boots and the faint whir of 7A's servos broke the silence. But quiet never lasted. Here, a sharp whistle cut through the fog. Then, from the shadows of a broken transport ship, figures emerged, tall, thin aliens with pale skin and jagged armor. Their black eyes locked on Daniel. "Bounty hunters," Daniel muttered, the lead. Alien stepped forward, his voice low and cold. "You have something that doesn't belong to you, human." Daniel's hand slid into his coat, where the stolen data chip rested. "It doesn't belong to you either," he replied. The alien raised a weapon long and curved, glowing faintly. At the edges, 2 more hunters moved to flank them. 7A's processors calculated. Fighting them directly was dangerous. But running with her damaged leg would be worse. Daniel glanced at her. "Stay behind me." The first alien lunged. Daniel dodged and swung his shock baton, hitting the attacker's side. The alien hissed and stumbled, but the other 2 closed. In fast, one of them knocked the baton from Daniel's hand, sending it clattering into the mud. Daniel fell back, struggling to block a heavy strike with his forearm. 7A didn't think she moved. Her arm shot forward, grabbing a loose panel of scrap from the ground. She swung it into the side of the alien's head. The metal rang loudly, and the attacker dropped to one knee. Another hunter charged her, grabbing her arm and twisting hard. Sparks flew from her shoulder joint. Her system screamed warning, structural damage. 12% integrity lost. But she didn't stop. She twisted in the opposite direction, letting her broken leg give way just enough to pull the alien off balance. With a heavy push, she sent him crashing into the side of a rusted engine. Daniel recovered his baton and struck the last standing hunter across the chest. The alien dropped, stunned. Breathing hard, Daniel grabbed her arm. "Come on before they wake up." They moved quickly through the fog, leaving the hunters groaning behind them. Every step was harder for 7A. Her damaged leg was failing fast. Finally, Daniel led her into the cover of a half-buried cargo ship. Inside, it smelled of dust and burnt oil, but it was hidden from the open sky. Daniel sat heavily against the wall. His hands were shaking not from fear, but exhaustion. "You saved me back there," he said quietly. 7A processed his words. "You saved me first," she replied. He gave a tired smile. "Guess we're even." For a moment, the world outside felt far away. Then 7A's sensors caught movement, a massive shadow passing across the narrow window. Daniel saw it too. "Drone," he whispered. The patrol drone was here again, its scanning beam sliding across the cargo ship's hull. A deep mechanical voice echoed from outside. "Surrender the human. Surrender the stolen data." Daniel's jaw tightened. "They're not stopping until they have it." 7A tilted her head. "What is on the data chip?" Daniel met her gaze. Proof that the Alien Council has been lying for years. "If I get it to the right people, everything changes." The drone's beam stopped moving. Then, with a loud hiss, something heavy landed outside the cargo ship. Daniel's eyes widened. "They've sent a ground unit." He pulled her toward. "Side exit. We move now, or we don't move at all." They slipped through the back of the ship, just as metal claws tore through the front wall. The ground unit, a tall, four-legged machine with glowing red optics, stepped inside. Searching for them, the fog swallowed them as they ran. But the sound of the machine's claws on metal followed, steady and unhurried. It was hunting them, and it knew they couldn't run forever. The fog was their only shield. It curled around broken towers of scrap and hid them from the glowing red eyes of the ground unit. But Unit 7A knew the machine would not give up. It was built to track heat, movement, even sound. Daniel moved quickly, guiding her between piles of debris. "Almost there," he whispered. "The factory's ahead." They reached a collapsed fence and crawled through. On the other side stood the factory, an ancient building of black steel and shattered glass. Dust covered the floor, and the air smelled of damp stone. Their footsteps echoed in the vast, empty space. Daniel found a corner. He took a deep breath, rubbing his tired face. "We'll stay here until night," he said. "The drone and its pet will lose patience." 7A scanned the building. No life forms. Except us. "That's good," Daniel muttered, pulling a small lantern from his bag. A dim yellow light filled the space, chasing the shadows back. For the first time since they met, they weren't moving. The quiet felt strange. 7A turned her head toward him. "Why are you hunted?" Daniel hesitated. His eyes were on the lantern flame, not her. "Because I took something they want to keep hidden. Something that can break their control." "The data chip," she said. He nodded slowly. "It's proof the Alien Council has been experimenting, not just on humans, on other species too, discarding those they can't use." "Like you," her processors stuttered. "Discarding, like trash." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Exactly." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small metal case. Inside was a silver chip, no bigger than her thumb. "This holds names, dates, and locations. It's everything they've done. If I can get it to the Resistance, they'll have to answer for it." 7A's systems replayed her own memories, being shut down, carried away, and dumped into the junkyard without a word. The cold metal ground, the endless rain, the silence. Now she knew it wasn't just because she was broken, it was policy. Daniel saw the change in her eyes. "You're more than what they told you," he said quietly, before she could respond. A faint scrape echoed from somewhere in the building. Both froze. Daniel switched off the lantern. Darkness wrapped around them. They listened. The scrape came. Again slow, dragging. Then a whispering sound, like claws on metal dot. Daniel crouched low, pulling his shock baton from his belt. "Scavengers," he mouthed. But 7A's sensors disagreed. Not scavengers. Two life forms. Large. The sound grew closer. A shadow moved across a gap in the broken wall. Then another. Suddenly, two tall shapes stepped into the faint light from outside Dalian bounty hunters. The same kind they'd fought in the junkyard, but these wore heavier armor. Daniel cursed under his breath. "They tracked us." The hunters moved apart, blocking both exits. Their weapons gleamed in the dark. "Give us the chip," one of them growled in a deep, echoing voice. "And we will let you die quickly." Daniel's grip tightened on the baton. Not happening. One hunter lunged. Daniel met him with a hard strike, sparks flashing. 7A, despite her damaged leg, moved toward the second hunter. She used the shadows to get close, then swung a loose steel beam from the floor. The hit knocked the alien's weapon aside. The fight was fast and brutal. Daniel ducked under a heavy strike and drove his baton into the first hunter's chest plate. The alien staggered back, snarling. 7A blocked a swing meant for her head. But the force threw her to the ground. Warning lights flared across her vision. Damage, left shoulder joint compromised. The second hunter raised his weapon to finish her. Daniel saw it and, without thinking, charged. He slammed into the alien, knocking him into a rusted support beam. The impact shook the whole wall. For a moment, the hunters were down. Daniel grabbed 7A's arm. "We have to go. Now." They ran. Deeper into the factory, weaving through fallen machinery and collapsed floors. The air grew colder the further they went. Finally, they reached a small maintenance room at the back. Daniel shut the door and braced it with a heavy pipe in the dim light from a cracked skylight. He checked her damage. "You're holding together," he said, trying to sound calm, but his hands were shaking. "You risked yourself," 7A said. "Yeah," he replied with a tired smile. "Like I said, I don't leave anyone behind." They sat in the silence for a while, listening for any sign of pursuit. None came. Maybe the hunters had given up for now. Daniel leaned back against the wall. "We can't stay here long. Stop the wasteland. If we cross it, we reach the Resistance." 7A processed his words. The wasteland was dangerous storms, predators, and no shelter. But she didn't hesitate. "I will go." He looked at her and nodded. "Then we go together, outside." Thunder rolled across the sky. Somewhere in the city, the drone's hum began again. Hunting. Part 5, the long road, the wasteland stretched out like a dead ocean. The sky was a pale gray, the ground cracked and dry. The air smelled of dust and metal, and the wind cut like a blade. Daniel stood at the edge, his coat whipping in the cold. Gusts. Behind them was the city and the junkyard full of hunters, drones, and danger. Ahead was emptiness. No cover, no food, no water. But beyond the wasteland lay the Resistance Unit 7AS sensors scanned the horizon. No structures detected. Temperature falling. Wind speed increasing. Daniel pulled his scarf higher over his face. "Yeah, I can feel it." They stepped forward. The first few hours were quiet, but the ground was uneven, scattered with sharp stones that slowed them. Daniel's boots were sturdy, but each step was heavy. For 7A, the damaged leg made travel harder still. She pushed on, her servos humming with effort. By midday, the sun broke through the clouds. It didn't bring warmth, only a harsh glare that made the horizon shimmer. The heat rose from the cracked earth, distorting the shapes ahead. Daniel stumbled slightly. "We need to find shade," he said. "There is no shade," 7A replied. Simply, but her processors noted something else. Daniel's body temperature was climbing too fast. She stopped. "You need water." He waved a hand. "I'll be fine. Biological signs suggest you will not." Daniel looked at her then. Sighed. "I have a little left." He pulled a small bottle from his bag and took a slow sip before offering it to her, then stopped, remembering. "Right? You don't need this." She tilted her head. "But you do." They kept walking. The wind began to change, carrying a faint, low howl. 7A sensors identified a quickly incoming sandstorm. She turned her head toward him. "Storm approaching. We must find shelter." Daniel scanned the empty wasteland. "Shelter? Where?" "There's nothing out here." But there was something. Her sensors picked up a metallic structure half buried under the sand about 300 meters ahead. Without waiting for his approval, she started moving toward it. By the time they reached it, the sky had darkened. The wind screamed, whipping sand into their faces. Daniel had to shield his eyes with his arm. The structure was an old cargo pod, tipped on its side. Its door was broken, but it still offered protection from the storm. They pushed inside, shutting the twisted door as best they could. Inside, it was pitch dark, except for the faint light filtering through cracks. Dust floated in the air. Old crates were stacked against one wall. Their labels faded. Daniel dropped his bag and sat heavily on the floor, breathing hard. His face was pale. 7A scanned him, heart rate elevated, hydration low. She reached for his bag, pulled out the bottle, and placed it in his hands. "Drink." He hesitated. "We don't know how long this has to last." "Drink," she repeated. He obeyed, taking 2 slow gulps before closing it. "You're bossy for a robot." "You are." "Stubborn for a human," she replied. For the first time since the journey began. He laughed, a short, tired laugh, but real. "Fair enough." The wind outside howled louder, rattling the metal walls. The cargo pod shook, and sand poured through the gaps. Daniel leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes. "I don't know if we'll make it," he admitted quietly. "You will," she said. He looked at her. "You sound sure." "I am programmed to protect life, and I choose to protect yours." He smiled faintly. "That sounds almost human." Storm lasted for hours. When it finally faded, they pushed the door open to see a world covered in new dunes. The air was clearer, but the temperature had dropped sharply. Breath came out as small clouds. They walked again, slower now. By the second day, Daniel's steps were heavier. His lips were dry, his voice rough. He stopped more often to rest. On the third day, his knees buckled, and he fell to the ground. 7A scanned him critical hydration loss. Muscle weakness, low body temperature. She knelt beside him. You cannot stop. He tried to speak, but his voice was weak. I can't. Her processors searched for solutions. She remembered something from her time in the hospital, how humans needed fluids and warmth. She opened a small maintenance panel on her torso and removed her coolant reservoir. It wasn't water, but it was non-toxic to humans in small amounts. She poured it into the bottle and offered it to him. Drink. His eyes widened. That's part of you. Yes. She said, drink. He took it, hesitating only a moment before swallowing. It wasn't pleasant, but it gave his body enough strength to move again. That night, they reached the edge of the wasteland. In the far distance, faint lights flickered the border outpost of the resistance. Daniel leaned on her shoulder as they walked. You saved my life, he said. She processed the words, then replied, we save each other. But neither of them saw the faint red light blinking in the dunes behind them. The tracker signal of the bounty hunters who had never stopped. Following. The ship was silent, but it was not a peaceful silence. It was the kind of silence that made every sound louder. The faint hum of the lights, the low crack of metal under stress, the slow breathing of those who tried not to be heard. Alira sat in the small corner of the med bay, knees pulled up to her chest. Her wounds were healing thanks to Captain Rian's quick actions, but her heart still carried the weight of fear. She had escaped the Syndicate's control, yet the shadow of their reach seemed to follow her. Rian stood by the control console, watching the blinking red dots on the scanner. One of them was too close. Far too close. They've found us, he said quietly. Alira's breath caught. Are you sure? He didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Yes. That's a Syndicate hunter ship. And it's not just passing by. The crew knew what that meant. They had minutes, maybe less, before they would be forced to run or fight. But Rian had a different plan. They won't stop until they take you back, he told her, his voice steady. You're not going back. But they'll kill you for helping me, she whispered. Then I'll die standing, Rian replied. Without hesitation, it wasn't bravery that made his words so strong. It was the way he said them, like it was simply the only truth that mattered. The ship's AI broke the tense moment. Alert, unknown boarding signal detected. Lights flickered, the air shifted. Something had attached to the hull. Rian's crew prepared for combat, but Alira knew what the Syndicate wanted. It wasn't the ship, wasn't cargo, it was her. She stood slowly, her hands trembling. I can end this. Rian turned sharply. Don't even think about. They want me. If I hide, they'll tear the ship apart looking for me. People will die, she said, her voice growing stronger. If I face them, maybe I can stop it. The captain's jaw tightened. No, you don't face monsters alone. A loud metallic thud echoed through the halls. Then another. They were cutting through the hall. Alira looked into Rian's eyes. Then stand with me. When the breach finally burst open, smoke and sparks filled the corridor. Shadows moved inside, tall armored Syndicate enforcers, weapons glowing. But they didn't see fear in front of them. They saw Rian and Alira standing together side by side, and for the first time in her life, Alira felt like she wasn't property. She was someone. The first shot was fired, and the fight began. The corridor shook with the force of the firefight. Blinding flashes lit up the smoke-filled air as the Syndicate enforcers advanced. Their heavy boots thundering against the steel floor, Captain Rian ducked behind a panel, firing short, controlled bursts. "Alira, keep your head down." But Alira wasn't hiding anymore. She had spent years being silent, obeying orders, waiting for someone else to decide her fate. That time was over. One of the enforcers moved toward the captain, weapon raised. Alira acted before she could think, grabbing a loose power conduit from the wall, sparks spitting into the air. She swung with all her strength. The metal slammed against the enforcer's helmet, and he crumpled to the floor. Rian glanced at her, half in shock, half in pride. "Remind me never to underestimate you." The crew fought hard, but the syndicate kept coming. For every soldier that fell, 2 more took his place. The ship's AI spoke through the chaos. "Warning, breach in engine room. Systems failure, imminent," Rian cursed under his breath. If they lost the engines, they would be trapped, and the syndicate would take everyone. "We can't win a straight fight," he shouted over the noise. "We need to make them retreat." Alira thought quickly. "The reactor core. If we overload it, they'll have to pull back." "That's a one-way trip," Rian said. She looked at him with fierce determination. "I'm not asking you to die. I'm telling you I won't go back to them, not alive." Before he could argue, she ran toward the engine room. Rian followed, firing at anyone who tried to stop them. The metallic smell of burning circuits filled the air. In the engine room, alarms blared. The glowing reactor pulsed like a beating heart. Alira's fingers flew over the controls, initiating an overload sequence. The countdown began. Override 180 seconds to critical detonation. The syndicate commander stormed in, his armor glinting red in the reactor's light. "Enough," he growled. "Come with us, and your friends live. Resist, and they die screaming." Alira stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. "You've already taken my life once. Don't get to take it again." He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Rian tackled him. The 2 men crashed to the floor, fists and elbows striking in a brutal fight. Alira didn't waste the moment. She locked the overload controls so no one could stop them. The commander roared in rage, breaking free of Rian's grip. But it was too late. 60 seconds to critical detonation. The commander realized the truth. If he stayed, he died. He gave a signal, and the syndicate forces began a rapid retreat. Rian grabbed Alira's arm. "We need to go now." They ran through the ship's corridors, smoke and sparks falling around them. The air was hot, heavy, almost alive with the reactor's growing energy. They reached the escape pods. Rian shoved Alira inside, but she pushed back. "What about you? I'll be right behind you," he said, his tone firm, but his eyes soft. She didn't believe him, not entirely, but she also knew she couldn't stop him. The pod door closed, sealing her inside. Through the small window, she saw him turn back toward the chaos. The pod launched, and Alira felt the crushing pull of acceleration. She looked back just in time to see the syndicate ship detaching, fleeing into the darkness. Then her home, the ship that had given her freedom, vanished in a white flash of light. Silence tears blurred her vision. She didn't know if Rian had made it out. She didn't know what came next. T knew one thing. She was free. Truly free. And somewhere, out there in the endless dark, she hoped the man who had stood beside her was still alive.